I'm drawing future Trunks from Dragon Ball Z. Trunks is one of my favorite characters to design because he combines strong facial features, unique hair, and iconic clothing. He is a very cool character design, right? Before drawing any details, I focus on overall proportions and silhouette. Um, the silhouette is important because viewers should be able to recognize the character even from a distance. Right now, I'm blocking in the head shape and basic construction. Once the structure is established, I begin building the facial features. The eyes are especially important because they help define the character's attitude and personality. Um, One thing I could say, just to segue real quick about his personality, um, I've been, touching on specific topics that I'll bring up, right? Um, and I know recently I was talking about character personalities. One thing interesting about his personality, and here's another thing. The reason I'm bringing this up is because this is one of those things that it could be kind of important to know regarding a character you're drawing, right? So his personality, um, I could also say this about Gohan's as well, right? I've mentioned before in videos where I was either drawing Goku or Vegeta that so Goku, he has a playful personality. He's like the playful, he's not a fool, but that's like people could say he's a playful fool, right? He's very powerful. He seeks power. He likes to seek growing stronger or whatever. Like he has that warrior type of spirit where he's doing it for fun. He enjoys the process of growing. Vegeta is like the he's a also a warrior, but his whole thing is he had a completely different upbringing. So Goku was like a person who he thought he was a human. He didn't even know he's a Saiyan, which is an alien. Is It's an alien race of warriors. He didn't even know that, but he sees that he has this internal drive to want to train and become stronger as a martial artist on planet Earth. And then he just grows up like that, and he also wants to protect humans. He was raised by humans, and he cares about people, and fun loving, and just enjoys training and bettering himself. Right. Vegeta was born into the Saiyan race on a planet that they were from, and he had to enlist in the military, and he was ruled over by a completely bloodthirsty tyrant who actually had no. This tyrant had no care for human life, and they were very ruthless, and probably sent the Saiyans, with Vegeta included, on missions where they were actually the bad guy and doing ruthless, terrible things. And then the tyrant turned on his race and had them try to destroy all of them. And so Vegeta has his personality is different because he had his his upbringing was that he had to a warrior who enlisted to be in the military had to experience a lot of terrible things, and then he also had his own aggressive personality and everything, and then he had a genocide committed against his alien race, and then he's like one of the few survivors of it, and then he has this mixture of aggression and a chip on his shoulder and anger and probably unprocessed emotions or and probably even PTSD or whatever, right? Not that they'd say that, but kind of goes right along with like what his personality is. And then he was also supposed to be the king of all Saiyans. His dad was a king, so he's considered like the prince of all Saiyans. So he has also a pride thing, but he was also only knows military and battle and all that stuff. So he has in being loyal to his bloodline, like he just thinks like that. He thinks like tribalistically or whatever because that's what he was born into. And then he has this thing where he doesn't like that, even though Goku is also of the same race as him, the same alien warrior race. He's jealous of Goku and he wants to outcompete him and he doesn't like how Goku's ahead of him training wise. So his constant thing on the show is that he's on the same team as Goku because it eventually ends up like that, but he's trying to outcompete Goku, and he has this pride trying to be better than people around him, trying to be seek power. He has this whole thing as a part of his persona, but it's very different from how Goku is, right? Now, both of their sons are half human, and that could have to do with their personality a little bit. But what happens is they don't really want to battle. They just want to have a normal life as kids growing up, and maybe they would get into martial arts or not. But both of them got forced to getting into it because their dads were in it, and then their dads have this occupation of protecting the planet from aliens coming to destroy the planet. And even if they weren't born on Earth, their dads would have been military people, and when they were born, they would have had to be in the military as well, or whatever, right? So the sons get pulled into that life, but that's not who the sons. That's not how they really think. That's not really what they genuinely want. Like, they don't genuinely want to be in a war zone and having to be in constant conflict and fighting. Maybe they might have genuinely like training and learning combat, but they don't want to actually have to deal with that or whatever, because it's like, it's just a harsh reality to have to live in, right? Where their life is on the line, all the time as well, right? So that's just the personality of the kids, right? But Future Trunks' personality specifically, the reason he has that personality is because he specifically what his character went through is that he is from the future, a future timeline where there was these robots called androids who were created, and the androids were created specifically to destroy this and kill off the Saiyans or whatever. I forget the exact storyline and the exact reason why. Is probably some evil genius who wanted to have their plan play out the way that they wanted in the future, from what I can vaguely remember. So, and they realized that they can't even find, the only way that they could kill the Saiyans was to create android robots that specifically had abilities and powers that could match and go past what the Saiyans' abilities were, from what this guy's level of knowledge and awareness was, right? So he creates these androids to go up against the Saiyan aliens, right? Now what happens is Future Trunks is from a timeline where everybody gets actually successfully got killed off by the Saiyans, and got killed off by the androids, and the androids even went and was wreaking havoc on humanity, and I forget the exact details of whatever, right? But what happens is he and Gohan ended up being the only few survivors in that alternate future, and they were amongst the only survivors, and them and whoever else was there with them created from what I forget the names, created a time machine so that Trunks could come back and warn everybody in the past from that alternate future. So warn Goku in the past and Vegeta, who he didn't even know would be his dad or whatever, and Piccolo and whoever is a part of the Z fighters who are protecting Earth. He comes from the future to warn them. It was something like Gohan. And both of these are two teenage boys who don't want to be in this life, right? But they end up having to face human genocide from androids. Gohan holds the androids off and fights them by himself and probably gets killed so that Trunks can come to the past in a time machine and warn everybody in advance, to start training years in advance before the androids even appear, so that they can have a chance to stop the androids from creating this terrible future, so that future Trump. So he's going to the past to try and prevent the future that he ended up in, right? Because like nobody was ready for that. So he comes back to the past. He warns them. Vegeta and Bulma hadn't even given birth to Trunks yet, and he's coming from the future, as if he's born from them. I forget if that's even the same timeline, from what I can remember. And he's coming back and warning everybody to do that, right? Now, when they say his personality or his attitude or all that stuff, his personality is he's a calm, level-headed person who doesn't want to be in warfare, but he got drawn into it and he had no choice. And he ended up being one of the last people on Earth alongside Gohan trying to protect humans and himself from robots who are trying to kill off humanity. So just being aware of that, let's say like he has like an intense expression. If you're aware that his intense expression is not because he's an intense person like Vegeta's an intense person, or some of these other characters I talked about, like they actually really are actually an intense person. But Trunks, he's a person that he doesn't want to be intense, but he just looks like he's serious because he just got done having a fight to get on a time machine to come to the past to warn everybody about this genocide war he's been surviving for the past I don't know how many years. So his intensity or his facial expression comes from a whole different setting and an entirely different reason. It's a nice person who didn't want to have to go to war, and then he ends up having to go to war, and he's one of the last few survivors, and that's why his face looks like that. But if you're aware of that, you can kind of maybe understand what little things you can do to the face structure, just knowing why a character looks the way that they do, right? Or even the source of why they look like that. It's just like little things to pay attention to. All right, so let me just continue here. I just wanted to segue and say that real quick. He could have a certain appearance, but if you know the reason why, that can affect how you even choose to draw it, so that you can get more of the authentic vibe out of it, if that's what you're trying to do. Okay, now moving into the hair. Trunks hairstyle looks simple at first, but balancing the shape correctly takes practice. Next, I'm building the jacket in clothing forms. Clothing can, add a lot of visual interest when the folds follow the body's structure. One thing I've been focusing on recently is understanding how overlapping shapes create depth. This is especially important in characters like Trunks because of the layered clothing design. As the sketch develops, I'm refining proportions and cleaning up the construction lines. This stage is often slower than the beginning because accuracy becomes important. Now I'm strengthening key contours and adding final details. Every drawing teaches something different. This particular sketch helped me practice facial structure, clothing construction, and silhouette design. As I finish the piece, I'm checking the overall balance and readability. Looking at the finished drawing, I'm happiest with the face and jacket structure. The next thing I want to improve is pushing perspective and depth even further. Even though I didn't shade, one thing I did here, which I had spoken about, this is an example of like not just the outlines of where shading would go, but even some of the texture and details. You can see some of that in the coat. So that's an example of anytime I was referring to that there, right? Where it's not shaded, but you can literally see texture within the coat outside of folds or outside of straps or outside of like button areas, or even shading at all, or even shading outlines. You can see where I deliberately added texture. The next thing I want to improve is pushing perspective and depth even further. Yep. Thanks for watching this future Trunks sketch, and I'll see you in the next drawing video.